Troy Terry is the MVP of the Anaheim Ducks. I'll tell you why on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, or TLOPN, your team every day. I'm your host, Jason JD Hernandez, been covering hockey for well over a decade, also the public address announcer for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, and this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your best bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're going to talk all about Troy Terry on this episode. And the reason that I didn't lead off with Troy Terry on the earlier episode is because I feel like I need to devote an entire episode to Troy Terry because I think he has been the most important, this is not hyperbole. I think he has been the most important player for the Anaheim Ducks this entire season. And arguably, he's been the most important Duck for the past 3 or 4 seasons, more than anyone else. And that includes a couple of other all-stars on this roster. This includes Frank Vatrano. This includes Ryan Getzlaf. This includes John Gibson. This includes Lukas Dostal. Troy Terry, I think, has been, for the most part, the key player that has been a steady presence for the Ducks. And there's also been a little bit of an added wrinkle to his game this season, which I will get to. But first, I just wanted to share this. I got this a couple years ago, and I just thought I'd be remiss if I didn't share that I got myself my Troy Terry bobblehead here. Now that I moved in, once I get some shelves in here, this bad boy's going up front and center. Yeah, baby. Troy Terry, that's what's up. I've said on this podcast before that he is my favorite Duck on the team right now. He's climbing the charts for all-time favorite Ducks of all time. And that includes a list where I'll admit Paul Kariya's on the top. But Troy Terry, when he first came onto the Ducks, I looked and I said, oh hey, we share a birthday. September 10th. Where my fellow Virgos at? That's what's up. So yeah, love that immediately. Also loved watching him play at the University of Denver. Thought he was tremendous in Denver. And then he came to Anaheim. And I said, okay, he's still got a little bit to go, but he's getting there. He'll get there soon. Then he spent some time in San Diego. And getting to watch him up close with the San Diego goals, that's where I really said to myself, oh, this kid's going to be really good someday. He's going to make some noise. I could see him getting double-digit goals at some point. And in fact, I did say on the Zeri podcast about 3-4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, that Troy Terry was going to bust double digits possibly in that shortened season thanks to COVID. But once it was past that season, I said, I guarantee that he's going to have a breakout season. I said at the time, at least 30 goals. He wound up with 37 that season. That was a breakout year. He has fallen back a little bit over the past couple of seasons. Last season, only 23 goals. But the Ducks, as a team, struggled to score. And believe it or not, Troy Terry was one of the better players for the Ducks last season. Yes, I know that Trevor Zegras did lead the team in goals and points. I get that. But Troy Terry was right behind him. Troy got 23 goals, 61 points. He was right there, almost toe-to-toe with Trevor Zegras. Troy did miss a dozen games last season. So far this season, 14 goals, 35 points. Oh, and by the way, that leads the team. Troy Terry has the team lead in points with 35. He has the team lead in assists so far this season with 21, but that's just the basic stats. I want to talk about the 3 games that Troy Terry missed. So why am I talking about the games that Troy Terry missed? He's only missed 3. Well, let's go back a little bit. Troy Terry did miss a few games earlier this season. Remember that little bad incident he had? This was right before New Year's Eve, where he ran into Mason McTavish. This was purely by accident, by the way. They ran into each other. Troy Terry wound up getting hurt during that game, didn't come back, and he wound up missing 3 games. And that was, by the way, in a 2-0 loss to those freaking Coyotes from Phoenix. I know I'm over my limit, but I don't care. So in that 2-0 loss, Troy Terry did leave the game. And once Troy Terry left, there was no scoring at all whatsoever. Like no scoring punch at all. After colliding with McTavish, he missed 3 games. Those 3 games that he missed, ready for this? They lost to the Oilers 7-2, and the Oilers were starting to get better at that time, but they were still kind of in the doldrums at that point. So the Oilers walloped them. Then they lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs in overtime. That was a winnable game, folks. That one kind of bugs me because that was a home game that the Ducks had. They just needed a little bit more offense, and they could not get it. Only 1 goal in over 60 minutes against the Toronto Maple Leafs. That one stung. Then they lost 3-1 to the Winnipeg Jets. In those games that Troy Terry missed, including the one where he was injured, they only scored 4 goals in 4 games. Yeah, that ain't going to cut it. So the Ducks obviously do better with Troy Terry in the lineup. We know that. We've seen that from time to time. And I think what's important with Troy Terry is, especially when he came back from injury, those 3 games off, he kind of had a hard reset. And he has come back with a vengeance. Let me give you Troy Terry's stats since he has returned from injury. In 11 games, since coming back, he has scored 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points in 11 games. That leads the team in that particular time span. 13 points, 11 games. Of those, a couple of game winners. The game winner that we just saw against the Minnesota Wild, that amazing injure Hartman, like just break his ankle for no reason, shoot it off of him, get an own rebound, score anyway. That game winner, beautiful. Then the game winner against the Nashville Predators, also a great goal. So very important. But also of importance, 3 power play goals in that span. So of the 5 goals, 3 of them coming in the power play. He's starting to get more aggressive. This is a point of contention I had with Troy Terry earlier in the year, in that he was not playing aggressive enough, and when he was playing aggressive, he just wasn't taking shots. And I'll speak to more of that on the second part of this podcast, and there is a reason for that. But now that Terry has had to take on the load of offense thanks to some injuries, I think he's done well in that role. And honestly, I think if he continues being this aggressive and playing that role, it'll be better for the Ducks. I mean, they are on somewhat of a roll right now towards the end of the month. I mean, they just beat the Minnesota Wild. They got a point in Dallas. They beat the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, hey, the Ducks have a 3-game point streak going on right now. Yeah. You kind of didn't see that coming, did you? And what has he done in those 3 games? An assist, a goal, 2 goals. He's got a 5-game point streak. 2 points against the Sharks, 2 points against the Rangers, the point against the Sabres, the point against the Stars, and 2 points against the Minnesota Wild. So he's got a nice little streak going on as of right now. And I think that streak will continue against the Sharks. I think so. So Troy Terry, he's kind of on a little bit of a heater right now. All right, we're going to head to the first intermission right now, and I'll talk a little bit more about why he wasn't super aggressive to shoot earlier in the season. We'll get to that on the other side. Now, a brief word from FanDuel. That is right. It is the Super Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks, and happy Super Bowl to everybody who's celebrating with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And I'm ready for Super Bowl parties. I'm ready for games. I'm ready for those delicious Super Bowl snacks. Gotta love them. But you know what? FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the football season with a W or 2 or 5. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl between the Niners and the Chiefs, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored. I think they even have the coin toss, by the way. And they have anthem prop bets and so much more. New customers can join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official online sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And please, folks, gamble responsibly. We're also brought to you by Factor. So really get going on your resolutions with Factor. So you're ready to get going for this new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. No more grocery stores, no more massive prep work, no more cooking fatigue. I feel that one, by the way. Forget the frantic lunch preps and rush dinners. Factor's 2-minute meals are the secret weapon in the new year. Fuel up fast with restaurant-quality meals, all delivered right to your door. Just head to factormeals.com/lockedonnhl50 and use code LOCKEDONNHL50 to get half off. That's code LOCKEDONNHL50 at factormeals.com/lockedonnhl50. I'm going to talk a little bit about why Troy Terry may not have been super aggressive. Okay, there is a reason for that. And the reason is someone that I have also been high on this season and someone that I did talk about on the last podcast. And when I mentioned Leo Carlsson in the last podcast and said there has been a reason for his development and who he's played with, yes, I kind of alluded to the fact that I might talk about Troy Terry soon. And I think Troy Terry being on that line with Leo Carlsson is important to the development of Leo Carlsson himself. Carlsson so far this season has done fairly well with the Anaheim Ducks. I look at some of the last games that he's played, and I think he's done a terrific job, personally. Leo Carlsson so far this season, 18 points in 30 games. He had been out for a little bit. He's now back. He's starting to perform again. No points the last few games, but 2 apples on the game against the Rangers, an apple against the Sharks. And Troy Terry being on that line for the most part with Leo Carlsson has helped him, especially in the beginning of the season. Remember when Troy Terry wasn't taking many shots? That's because he was helping out Leo Carlsson right away. And I think it's important for Carlsson to feel comfortable in the offense, to feel like he's a part of the team. That is the mark of a good teammate, and that is the mark of a possible good future captain. I know a lot of folks are saying Mason McTavish should be the future captain. There are a few that are saying that Troy Terry should be the future captain. I personally am on the Troy Terry boat for naming him the future captain of the Anaheim Ducks. And I think we got to mention that Troy Terry so far this season, okay, most of his assists this season are of the primary variety. Troy Terry this season, as I mentioned, 14 goals, 21 assists. 15 of those have been primary assists. And who has he given the most assists to this season? Why, none other than Leo Carlsson. Yeah. He primary assisted on 5 goals for Leo, and I'm only talking primary assists, by the way, not the secondaries, primaries. 5 of those are to Leo Carlsson. That's a third of his primaries this season. There's been a couple to Adam Henrique, a couple to Trevor Zegras, a couple to Cam Fowler. But Leo Carlsson has been kind of his bread and butter as to who he's feeding the puck to, including, remember that hat trick that Leo Carlsson had earlier this season? Remember that? I remember that. That was a fun game. That was one of my favorite games of the season. In fact, one of the youngest hat tricks that we've probably ever seen in NHL history. And that took place on November 10th. And during that game, I take it back. It was one primary assist that game. Two of them were a different game. But Troy Terry being one of the first guys to congratulate Leo Carlsson when that happened, that was a cool moment, folks. That was such a cool moment and something that I loved seeing. And I loved seeing that for Leo Carlsson, but I loved seeing the team reaction as well. And he's kind of taken Leo under his wing. But I've noticed in the last few games that whenever there's like an important moment in the game or wherever there's a huddle, Troy Terry has been right there to kind of talk to his teammates. And he's talked to some of the younger guys too. I mean, he's kind of put, like I said, Leo Carlsson under his wing, and he's talked to some of the other young guys. I've seen him talk to Jackson Lacombe a couple of times. Last game against the Minnesota Wild, there was a moment during that game where Jackson Lacombe did have a breakaway, and one of the first guys to meet him on the bench was Troy Terry, and he talked to him for a few seconds, probably telling him something about that play, like what he did right, what he could have done to beat Gustafsson in the last game, giving little tips and tricks here and there. And I think Troy Terry needs to continue that if he wants to possibly be the captain of the Anaheim Ducks in the future. And the other reason, Terry's here on a long-term deal. He's got a few more years left. I think he's got it in him to be the captain, and helping out Leo Carlsson, a big part of that. And I would love to see those two on the same line for years to come. I know Henrique is also on that line. Henrique is probably going to be leaving at the trade deadline this year. Look, I'm just being honest. That's probably going to happen. So I think Terry and Carlsson need to rely on each other a little bit more as the season draws on. All right, we're going to head into the second intermission. I've got some stats for y'all. I've got some charts for y'all. We'll get to that after the second intermission. Stay locked in. Now, a brief word from eBay Motors. All right, passion, drive, and patience, which Troy Terry has a lot of. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP like Troy Terry and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. and Anaheim Ducks customers. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you're locked in with the number one Troy Terry fan, JD Hernandez. Yeah, I mean, maybe I could think of a couple other big Troy Terry fans out on the Twitterverse. But I will proclaim myself as one of the bigger Troy Terry fans out there. This is just going to get a little bit personal here, but when I got to do public address for the Ducks game, the exhibition game back in October, I mean, it was a dream come true. Not only to get to do public address for an NHL game, but to see the Ducks and the Coyotes. That was a dream come true. Getting to announce Troy Terry's name on the game time goal. I was so damn excited to get to say Anaheim Ducks goal scored by number 19, Troy Terry. Ooh, I got slight chills. And by the way, I just found out that game's on YouTube. So I'll have to toss a link to that at some point, but super cool just to be able to do that. All right. So I do want to spew some charts here because I think it's going to be very important to talk about. And this is thanks to one of my favorite websites out there, Hockey Stat Cards. If you haven't checked out Hockey Stat Cards yet, it's a pretty fun little website. It gets a little bit more than the basic websites and one that I refer to numerous times. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop over here and put this up. Ah, that was terrible. I'm going to put, wrong hand. There we go. All right. So we've got a chart here that shows you a few things. Those three that you see, offense rating with percentile, defense rating with percentile, net rating with percentile. You ready for this? The percentile for the net rating is an 85.5%. He's one of the top 15% of all players in the National Hockey League right now. And you notice those little bar or those little circle graphs, those are all above 75%. He is one of the just best all-around players in the NHL. And in fact, all of those are above 80%. Every single one of those circle charts. So just to kind of go over this, 14 goals, and the basic stats are there. The individual expected goals, it ranks up there towards the top of the league. Almost 12 individual expected goals. And he's got 14. So he's performing a little bit above expected, which is very good. Expected goals for 27.2 while he's on the ice. That's a little bit below par. PK goals against, also below par. But there's something else I want you to look at here. Expected goals against. 25.38, which is among the best in the league. And if you poke around more on the Hockey Stat Cards website, you'll see this in bar graphs. Goals, assists, individual expected goals are way up there. Penalties drawn, also good. Penalties taken, not so much, including that last game where he took a couple of bad penalties. Although to be fair, he did take that one penalty in the third, jumped out of the box and scored the game-winning goal when he injured Ryan Hartman's ankle. Okay, that one's fine, folks. But if you poke around the website, the bar graph for the expected goals against is off the charts. We don't talk about his defensive rating enough. And even on that line chart that we're showing right now, that is starting to go up. And that is actually above average, by the way. His defense has gotten better over the last few seasons. And I remember seasons past where that graph would hover right around the middle and the defensive rating would be about league average. This is one component of Troy Terry's game that he has improved on and has worked on a little bit, and that's individual defense. When there's a bad goal against the Ducks, Troy Terry's name isn't one that you mention a whole lot. If you really think about it, has there been a whole lot of bad goals or bad defensive sets against Troy Terry past the first month, of course? I mean, first month, he was a little bit lost. But after those little bit of growing pains, after having a couple of bad breaks early in the season, he's really put it together. And his defensive game has improved quite a bit since he's returned from injury. Have you noticed also, by the way, that Troy Terry is playing better team defense? The assignments are, the way he's getting the assignments, those are much improved as well. So just his overall defensive game is something that we probably don't talk about a whole lot, but we've got to give him his flowers. We've got to give him his just due for looking to round out his entire game. And if he can continue to do so in the coming weeks, in the coming months, and get even better defensively, then I could see him as being one of the better all-around players in the entire National Hockey League. Well, I know it's a stretch for me saying that, but I have to take notice on another aspect of his game that has improved. So give the man his flowers. There you go. All right. That's going to do it for this Troy Terry Love Fest. And by the way, for those of you that have stuck around till the end of the episode, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for watching. I hope that was informative. And I hope I've possibly convinced you that maybe Troy Terry can be the future captain of the Ducks. Did I at least convince one or two of you? If I did, I will call that mission accomplished, baby. Yeah. All right. That's going to wrap it up. Don't forget, this podcast is free and is available across all platforms. We're also ad-free on Amazon, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel because why not? It is fun. And yeah. You could find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at StimpyJD. The show's former Twitter is at LO_Ducks. You could email me at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. I will open up the mailbag, but not this week. I will open up the mailbag next week since I'll be at Coachella pretty much all this week. Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, all at Coachella. If you guys are stopping by Acrisure Arena, shoot me a holler. Let me know on Twitter if you're coming out or not. Also, got to give a shout out to the Locked On Network because we have our first 24/7 YouTube channel, so check that out as well. Once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is so, so greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, or Locked On Patos de Anaheim, I'm JD Hernandez saying have a great rest of the day. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.